Guys, unbelievable. How many movies are going to come out of this year alone? Maduro, Artemis 2, and now this? An F-15E Strike Eagle shot down over Iran, followed by one of the most amazing and intense rescue operations in history. Now, we got to dive in because this is going to get really crazy. In the early morning hours on this last Friday of April 3rd, 2026, a U.S. Air Force F-15E Strike Eagle from the 494th Fighter Squadron, the Panthers, is flying deep inside Iranian airspace when it gets hit. The missile locks on and strikes the aircraft. The pilot loses all control of the jet and the two crew members are forced to eject. Both a pilot and a weapons systems officer end up miles apart with the mountains between them, and unfortunately, the Wizzo sustains a broken ankle and a possible concussion on impact. They've got no direct communication with each other, and there is no time or way to regroup at this point. So they are each going to have to fend for themselves and remember their training. A question that came to mind as I was researching this is, how did the pilot and the Wizzo get separated in the first place? So this is what I found and what makes sense to me. Even though the pilot and the Wizzo ejected from the same aircraft, they do so milliseconds apart, and at hundreds of knots, that tiny delay instantly translates into hundreds of feet of distance. Once their parachutes deploy above 10,000 to 15,000 feet, powerful upper atmospheric winds can push them laterally at significant speeds, drifting them miles apart before they even reach the ground. Then comes the real problem, of course, the terrain. They landed in the brutal, jagged environment of the Zagros Mountains, where even a short distance on a map can mean a massive ridgeline, a deep canyon, or a 2,000-foot elevation barrier blocking any chance of regrouping. Especially with the Wizzo reportedly dealing with a broken ankle, at this point, SEER training takes over: survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. This forced both airmen into complete radio silence to avoid detection by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, who could basically triangulate any transmission and hunt them down. That meant no coordination, no communication, just independent survival. As a result, what should have been a single rescue mission immediately split into two separate operations. And where this happened changes literally everything as well. I mean, if we pull up Google Maps and zoom into the southwestern region of Iran, into the Zagros Mountains, then go a little tighter in around a city called Dasht, over towards the Kola Kazi National Park near the town of Mayor. This isn't flat desert. This is a wall of terrain, 7,000-foot ridge lines, sheer cliffs, loose shale that slides under your feet, and box canyons that trap you with no way out. The temperatures can swing from brutal daytime heat to freezing cold at night. There's almost no vegetation, no tree cover, nowhere to hide. So most likely you're going to have to move positions at night and sleep during the day to create the best chances of staying undetected by roaming IRGC members. And of course, you're not alone. Roads, villages, nomadic tribes moving through the valleys. Even when you think you're hidden, you're not necessarily completely. Within hours, the U.S. launches a rescue operation, not at night, but in broad daylight. Roughly 7 hours after the crash, HH-60 Whiskey Jolly Green 2 helicopters push into Iranian airspace, and it turns violent immediately. IRGC forces, local militias, even armed tribesmen open fire. The helicopters take hits, crew members are wounded, and A-10 Warthogs drop in low to keep them alive. One A-10 is hit so badly, the pilot barely makes it to the Kuwaiti airspace before ejecting, but somehow, after all of that, they still got the F-15E Strike Eagle pilot out alive. And the A-10 Warthog pilot was also rescued. So after all that happens, the U.S. goes completely silent. No announcement, no confirmation, and it seems those routine airstrikes take a break because they know the Wizzo is still out there. This becomes survival. He's alone, at altitude in freezing conditions, and now one of the most hunted men on planet Earth. He moves immediately, putting distance between himself and the crash site, covering roughly 10 to 12 kilometers, about 7.5 miles, through jagged mountain terrain while injured. He climbs higher, not lower, to gain visibility and control. He ditches anything reflective, maintaining strict reflection discipline so nothing catches sunlight. He moves only at night. During the day, he disappears, wedging himself deep inside a mountain crevice, completely still for hours at a time, all while dealing with freezing temperatures and, I'm sure, dehydration, while he must ration any water or food that he has left with him at this time. He also has to deal with a considerable amount of pain due to his injury, and also has to keep an eye out for even wildlife threats like rattlesnakes and mountain lions. Everything out there is literally trying to kill him. At around noon on Friday, he makes contact using a combat survival evader locator beacon. It sends a tiny encrypted burst to satellites, just enough to say, "Hey, I'm alive," while masking his exact position from enemy triangulation. Meanwhile, Iran goes all in. IRGC units flood that region, Drones scan overhead, ground patrols sweep the valleys, a $60,000 bounty is offered to local villagers, turning the search into something much bigger than just a military operation. For nearly 36 to 48 hours, this man is one of the most hunted individuals on Earth. At the same time, U.S. intelligence notices something strange in the terrain. Perfectly spaced structures scattered across the hills, possibly disguised as trees, likely ventilation systems, which suggests this entire operation is unfolding near a sensitive underground military or nuclear site. That raises the stakes even further. So instead of rushing in, the U.S. slows it down, manipulates the battlefield. The CIA leaks false intelligence into Iranian channels, suggesting that the Wizzo has already been recovered and is being moved south toward the Persian Gulf. And for a while, it actually works. Iranian units shift, convoys redeploy, search efforts move in the wrong direction. While that's happening, the US takes control of the battle space. The Space Force uses satellites to disrupt and jam Iranian communications. Aircraft stack overhead. F-15Es, F-35s, A-10s, HC-130J tankers support the operation. MQ-9 Reapers establish a 3-kilometer kill zone. Anything entering it is engaged. Then comes the main effort. By the night of April 4th, nearly 200 special operations personnel, what's known as the Alpha Package, move in. SEAL Team 6, Delta Force, Rangers, Green Berets, Pararescue Combat Controllers, supported by the 160th Night Stalkers, flying MH-6 and AH-6 helicopters. This isn't just a rescue anymore. This is a full-scale combat operation. They insert into the Zagros Mountains and find the Wizzo in a crevice, injured but alive, and stabilize him on site. Then the team begins a grueling movement toward the extraction point, a remote agricultural landing strip about 18 kilometers away. That's roughly 11.2 miles. The site is a 3,600-foot dirt runway. From the airstrip, the sensors suggest a firm surface, but it's a trap, a layer of fine moon dust sand. As the two MC-130J Commando 2s and HC-130J Combat King 2s touch down, they immediately sink. The wheels buried to the axles, the massive transport planes are effectively anchored to the Iranian desert. The situation turns from bad to worse. A critical moment has just occurred. Iranian ground forces, having seen through the CIA's deception, began closing in on the airstrip. Several HH-60W Jolly Green 2s and MH-6 Little Bird helicopters take heavy small arms fire and RPG fire, sustaining significant damage. Now the mission is on the brink, and you have a wounded Wizzo, nearly 200 elite personnel, and no way out. The perimeter explodes into a fierce firefight. It's close-range combat, with U.S. forces using heavy suppressive fire to hold the line. Overhead, the stack is working tirelessly over time. A-10 Warthogs and AH-6 Little Birds hammer advancing IRGC positions with 30mm cannons and rockets. MQ-9 Reapers maintain a strict 3-kilometer kill zone, firing Hellfire missiles at any vehicle that breaches the perimeter. Reports indicate at least 9 enemy combatants are killed on the ground as the U.S. forces refuse to yield even an inch of territory. But time is up. With the IRGC's main force approaching and the plane still stuck, the commander makes the ultimate call: scuttle the assets. Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 technicians rig the stranded C-130s and at least 2 disabled helicopters with thermite and C4. Massive explosions rip through the airstrip, turning millions of dollars in technology into scrap to prevent Iran from capturing any of that sensitive technology. Then, at the edge of failure, the Plan B arrives. 3 aircraft identified as specialized Charlie 295 Whiskey light transports from the secretive 427 Special Operations Squadron come in low, just 500 feet above the jagged terrain with no lights. They perform a hasty landing on the most solid part of the strip, staying on the ground just long enough to load the Wizzo and every single operator. They bank hard to the west, clearing Iranian airspace just as the sun rises. Against all odds, every American makes it out alive. Hours later, a message appears from the president on Truth Social. We got him. And then almost immediately, the narrative battle begins. Iranian state media starts pushing a completely different story, claiming that they destroyed the stranded C-130 aircraft during the firefight, that they inflicted the damage, that they drove the U.S. forces out, and the only evidence they present, footage of a wreckage, a pair of American Eagle boxers, and even something as random as toothpaste left behind at the site. But, of course, it's not true. Those aircraft were deliberately destroyed by U.S. forces by design to prevent capture. And the fact that this gets spun into propaganda tells you just how tightly the IRGC is still trying to hold on to any remaining control they have over the narrative at this point. This, ladies and gentlemen, is gonna go down in the history books. What a wild time it is. I mean, the stakes really couldn't be any higher, risking nearly the lives of 200 people to bring one man home. But you know what's crazy about all of this? I bet you every one of these service members would have said, this is totally worth it. Guys, if you don't get a little tickled with some enthusiasm and inspiration from this story, I really don't know how to help you. Also, we need to re-emphasize in the aftermath, not a single US personnel casualty was lost. There was obviously injuries, but oh my goodness, guys. This stuff is crazy. Guys, it's still fresh. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think there's going to be any medals of honor handed out from this mission? I guess only time will tell. We're definitely going to see you at the movies when the story finally comes to the blockbuster. Until then, I'll catch you here on YouTube in the next video. Hit that like button or dislike button and subscribe down below. We'll see you in the next one.